Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators Football Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by your other host, Mr. Randy. Randy, how are we feeling?
B, what's shaking, my man? Feeling great. Feeling good. Feeling great. How are you doing? Lot of
Fine.
action. Yep, lot of action on the recruiting trail.
Yeah,
In
buddy.
football, in basketball, it's palpable. I'm starting to get amped up, although I know it's ways away. I don't know, man. A lot of moment, a lot of things happening. It's provocative. Gator Nation is getting going, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely a lot of off-season activity here. We're in the doldrums of late
Yeah.
spring or summer timing, where there is usually nothing going on, but we are getting a fair amount of news, which is nice. Not going to get into a ton of that tonight. If you're not up on some of the recruiting stuff, we'll definitely keep you posted on that as things go along. But tonight's pod, we are going to discuss what next season is going to look like, and if the Gators can return to SEC contention specifically in regards to that. So that is the topic of the evening, and we're going to talk about how they might look to do that, try to put some data behind that, kind of look at the league, what it looks like, what it looked like last year, something we did similar to last season, but we were looking more in terms of would they be able to get back to dominance. So that obviously they achieved. Oh, wait.
What? Negatory Ghost Rider.
Yeah, no, clearly not. But we definitely did not hit those marks. But it's funny because the data backed that up, and we can look at that because the marks we needed to be at, we were nowhere near them, based on the kind of bar that we set for that and what it needed to be. And similarly, from what we saw this year, it's a little different, but we'll talk about it. But I think we've established a really good set of metrics we can look at here to say, okay, if we can hit these, then we're probably in the conversation. Not necessarily to win it, but certainly to be in, that upper third anyway. So we'll talk to that here in a minute. So with that, let's get things started. Our intro, our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda, as always. Our mission to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our accuracy disclaimer is that our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or stats.ncaa.org, and recruiting data comes from on3.com. Our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss our observation of player personnel decision as well as on the field execution. All right. With that, our agenda this evening is we're going to look at what does it mean to be in contention and how excuse me, how possible is that? And what does it look like for this season? We'll then talk about the metrics that are going to be needed for that, the SEC specific metrics for some of these teams, what it looked like this past season, what we think will be necessary moving into next year, a few different metrics that'll regard that, not just win-loss, but we'll go deeper than that. And then we're going to look at the schedule of this season, as we're calling it, the 9-game SEC gauntlet. So we'll kind of break that down. We've also got a comparison to last year's schedule, because even though we're calling this a gauntlet, I think the schedule may be easier than last year's game. But we'll look at it. We'll talk about some key matchups on it for sure, and kind of break down whether or not we think the things that we want to see as being possible are, and go from there. And then lastly, we'll talk about are we in contention? Are we really able to make this goal, or is this kind of a fallacy in year one? With Sumrall, we'll see what's there and what's not. So, and then after that, of course, close things up and wrap up from there. So with that, let's get things started. Let's look at what contention looks like in terms of the league. What does the SEC look like? Let me start with that. What do we look like this year going into 26? What does the league look like? Is it better, same, weaker than last year? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, to put the words of our good friend Johnny Carson's weird, wild stuff, and uh, the interesting thing about the SEC, and I get it, the Big Ten, they're gonna say what they say, but there's still a lot of power in the SEC, hence why it's like power conference, hence why it still delivers when it comes to the NFL draft. I believe there was another record set again, B, regarding
Yes,
number
there
of draft
was.
picks coming out of the Southeastern Conference. Yes, I realize the Southeastern Conference has not won a national championship in a few seasons, but that is not the end all be all. As we know, anything can happen. Look at the structure of the conference, not to mention, look at the amount of teams that were in the CFP in general from the SEC. CFP, SEC, a lot of acronyms going on. Anyways, outside of that, you've got some, you got some unique things this year, right? Let's start with, I'm going to start with real quick, high level Kentucky football, right? Stoops is
Yep.
finally out. Will Stein is in. Hey, so you got a new head coach, you got a new offense coordinator, now you got a new quarterback. Awesome. Great. That should be interesting. Arkansas Razorbacks. Yes, they're a basketball school. Nolan Richardson, big nasty. I get it. But hey, Ryan Silverfield, hopefully he'll make them relevant. Not anytime soon. He was a head coach at Memphis. He comes over, new head coach, new OC, new quarterback. Wow. Okay. Golish to Auburn.
Yeah.
Enough said. Jeff Libby, Mississippi State. They're going to need a whole hell of a lot more cowbell. More cowbell there. Okay. The drink up in Missouri. Let's just say, he better enjoy that view of the Ozarks a little bit longer. Um, Oklahoma, they got a great defense. It showed last year. That's what gave them a lot of chances in those games. But again, John Mateer is going to come back. We'll see what happens. I don't know if they're going to be too much better, however. Hey, Ole Miss, Pete Golding, Trinidad Chambliss, congratulations on, winning that preliminary injunction against the NCAA regarding eligibility. We'll see what they look like without old what's his face? Shady Kiffin there at the helm. Okay, great.
Shady Kiffin.
Yeah,
Shady
there you
Kiffin. I
there you
like it.
go. Of course, LSU, we know about LSU. We know about them down there in Baton Rouge and what they have going on. They're going to they've just literally mortgaged the farm and they stole another farm to mortgage to be able to put together this team.
You're
So that
not
is what
kidding.
it is. Shane Beamer there in South Kakalaki. Lenora Sellers, great talent there. We'll see if they can put some things together. And Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel doing Josh Heupel things. But hey, quarterback battle. They have a true freshman and a redshirt freshman battling out. Okay, at the end of the day, you still got uh, Gunner at UGA, so that's going to happen. I don't know, man. I know a lot of people are saying because of NIL and talent being spread around, a lot of talent has been lost or left the SEC. I just disagree. That's my high level take.
Yeah, and I think we'll establish that that's not the case here in a little bit when we look at some of these talent metrics. But yeah, so we'll come back to that. But um, so yeah, overall, I mean, I guess you lose. I believe the number was 87. I'm shooting from the hip on that, so apologies if it's wrong, but I believe it was 87 draft picks um, that go to the NFL from the conference. You have a very strong conference showing last year, as we'll talk to in a little bit here. You have 6 teams with 6 wins or better last year in conference play, right? Now this year that would change to 7 wins or better would be the equivalent because you're going to the 9 game schedule. But nonetheless,
Yep.
um, so you've got some real depth at the top, if you will. It's not just a couple of elite teams, right? As we've kind of always seen, a lot of balance in the conference. But there was a definitive kind of upper third, middle tier, and then lower third. I guess it's a middle third. I don't know why I called it a tier instead of a third. But yeah, I think you
The
saw
third,
that
yeah.
last season. I would expect to see something similar again this season. I don't think you're going to have it be anything super top heavy. I think we've kind of moved to more parity across a lot of the leagues, especially at least in the Power Four, because of NIL, because of player dispersion, like we've talked about in previous
Yeah.
pods, right? I think you're going to see more and more of that as time goes along, though, depending on how much oil money Texas is really going to throw at this stuff, whether it be A&M or Tech. Man, those guys are just spending. Well, they're spending like LSU out there. I mean, it's nuts. But
Yep.
yeah, those recruiting classes are looking crazy right now. So we'll have to see how that goes. But regardless, um, overall, I don't think I can call it stronger based on what I'm seeing. We didn't have any coaching movement that makes me go, whoa, this makes the conference way better, right? But
Yep.
or player movement for that matter either. But having said that, I certainly don't think we're any weaker overall when you look at it, and I think you'll see some of that from the talent composite stuff from last year, and then once we get that for this year, my guess is it's fairly similar in what you'll see.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think that's a big thing to consider. So yeah, I would say kind of to your point in a similar fray there that, it's it's probably much more of the same is really what we're looking at, which means a strong, balanced, conference, at least in the top half at a minimum, and maybe even working your way down a little below half. But then after that, of course, it's going to fall off like anything would. But ultimately, I think that's kind of the story as we go into this year. I'd be surprised if it's anything different than that. Is there maybe one team that rises above this year? Maybe. I don't see it on paper. Not that stands out. Maybe Texas. Maybe
I was gonna say.
if Arch steps up, they're the one that could, I guess. But they're the only one that I could really see that on paper, right, stands out potentially. But that's it. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like, though. But even still, it's not like the ones behind them are going to be. It's not like they're going to be, undefeated, and the next team's going to have 3 losses. No, it's not going to look like that. Especially not with the rotating opponents and the 9-game schedule and everything. I just don't see it. So anyway,
Right. And by the way, you were accurate. It was 87 drafted, surpassing the mark of 79 last draft.
season. Yeah, wow, that's a heck of a surpass too. That's a lot more. Which 79 was also a record, by the way, last year.
It
So
was.
just keep breaking the records. But anyway, okay, so let's talk about the transition here from Billy to Sumrall. Obviously, Napier's record in SEC play, not great. 12-16 when he was actually the head coach, if you count his full tenure, or full era, I guess you'd say, when he wasn't there in the end of last season. We dropped that to 12-20. So yeah, that's 4 more losses after he left. So not great to say the least. Having a sub 500 SEC schedule is pretty ridiculous. Again, not sure why we had a 4th year of that. I really don't know what we were thinking, but it is what it is. So we'll move on now and go from there.
We held on to hope, B. A lot of hope.
Yeah, a lot too much hope. But I guess the question that makes us ask is, with the transition to Sumrall, is there something that can happen that makes this program relevant right away, right now, this season, 2026? Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think the main thing that I get from and here's the thing, coaches have different ways about them, attitudes, recruiting styles in general. And the main thing that Summerall brings is relevance in his tone, in his demeanor. And I think we mentioned this previously talking about the first Summerall pod that we did. It doesn't, we know when there's something's being amplified. We know when something's kind of like, okay, he's saying this anecdotally. Okay, is that really true? He's just saying that to say it because he's got a hot mic. No, that's just him, because he doesn't just say it at the podium. He says it in practice, then he says it on this podcast, then he says it on this interview, then he says it in this team meeting, then he does it over here. And that's just him. That's how he's wired. It's in his DNA. And the thing of it is with all the things that Billy did right, yes, I said that, from a culture standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, although admitting the organization was a little too big,
Yeah.
Sumrall just happened to come in here, and out of everything else that he's been able to say and do, at the end of the day, you have one job. Yeah, you got multiple. You have one job: to win.
Yeah.
And how quickly can you create not just a culture, a winning culture? How quickly can you be relevant? How quickly can you, because arguably we can say that he had a lot more to work with than Napier had to work with, bar none. I think that's been established. But now the main thing that Summerall, and I think the main difference between both of them, is a sense of urgency.
Yep.
Massive shift in the sense of urgency and or impatience, as you would say, B. Because at the end of the day, whereas Billy says we're evaluating this, we're looking at this, we're looking at that, we're going to be here shortly, or it's going to take this. Summerall just said point blank, we're going to win now. We're just going to win now.
Well, he wants to. He said he wants to. I don't think he guaranteed it.
Okay, sorry. He wants to win now, but guess what? Winners win. He's a winner. They're going to win.
Nice. Yes. Good paraphrasing there.
So,
And I think for that reason, right, because of that urgency, because of that impatience, this feels like it could be a turning point, right?
yes.
When you look at the talent that's still on this roster, we've talked about it, we'll talk about it more, but the building blocks for it are there. Again, we've also talked about you take more advantage of that talent, right, with use of better play calling, scheme, design, timing, right, all those things. You do those things, and it feels like with urgency and impatience, as you mentioned, you could turn a corner here. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? Are we saying you go, undefeated or 11-1? No, I'm not calling for that in any way. But does it mean you turn to, a 9-3 mark possibly? Yeah, I can see that as being possible. I'm not calling for that either, but I think it's possible. I think maybe even 10-2 is hanging around out there in the universe of possible. Again, not calling for it, don't think it's going to happen, but wouldn't pluck it away and say, nah, that can't happen. Right? Which last year, I don't know that I really thought that was on the table. But again, schedule did dictate some of that. And again, we'll talk about that more. I guess that's the thing, though, is going back to this year. It feels like you could see that turn this year. And I guess going back to the question I asked you, does Sumrall make it relevant? What is relevant now? Like what does it take to be relevant, right? And that's what we're going to get into here and talk about. To get into contention feels like it's what it needs to be relevant, right? So what did that look like last season? We'll start off with these top 6 teams from last year. So the top 6, which obviously there's 16, so top 5 would technically be, you need 5.5 or 5 1/3 to give you the top third. So we did top 6 because there were ties. So your top 6 were Georgia at 7-1, Bama at 7-1, Ole Miss at 7-1, Timu at 7-1. That's Texas A&M for those that don't know our little game there. Texas at 6-2, and Oklahoma at 6-2 as well. So you had 6 teams, 6-2 or better. That's a pretty high bar, granted. But when you break it down and look at some of the metrics on this, it's kind of interesting because what you end up seeing is a pattern that emerges there. But before we get into that, I think going back to the relevance question, you probably got to be either in that top 6 or real close to it, right? That upper third. Again, we're not saying you got to be playing in the SEC title game. We're not saying you got to be, dominating opponents and looking like a wrecking ball out there. That's not what we're calling for at all. We're just saying to get back into relevance, you probably need to be in that upper third to be like, yes, okay, this is a team that's now in contention, right? That's playing for something. That was what we were talking about in this whole thing. So before we get into metrics, any thoughts on, I guess, just, what that looks like for next season? Do we think it's 6-2 again? Do we think maybe 5-3 gets into that top tier possibly? What are your thoughts on the win-loss piece of it?
It's got to be somewhere in the vicinity of 6-2. I don't know what 5-3 will do unless, the quote unquote talent, to what you said earlier, had been spread out that much to the point where the playing field has been more even. But I feel like 6-2 hits the mark. And not to mention, this is going to sound like a jab, and it probably is, but folks, in the Napier era, it ended with 21 Gators getting drafted into the NFL.
Yep.
21 players. That's a lot. And it was quoted by Hail Florida Hail, so I'll just say that. But that's a lot for a program that did not. Now, mind you, 2 out of those 4 seasons we started the season ranked. Every single season we finished the season unranked. So I don't know what you call that. You call it wasted talent.
Twice didn't make a bowl. Once lost the bowl, though. Again, that's a bowl that whatever half the team sat out.
Yeah.
So 1 bowl win with 21 players drafted, and the bowl that you have to show for it is the Gatsby.
I rest my case, Your Honor. So, yep. Yeah, on that basis, when you look at everything else that is going on in the SEC right now, coaching changes, QB changes, those positions that really matter, 6-2 is going to hit the mark to be.
Yeah, I should have corrected that because we're going to a 9-game schedule. It's really probably 6-3.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's on me. I said it. So 6-3,
I know what
seven
you
and
meant.
two, 8-1. I think that's your relevant. I think 6-3 is probably your mark. I
Mark,
definitely don't
yeah.
think you can be 5-4 and be up there. I don't think there's any way that happens. I don't think there's any world. And listen, maybe you even got to be 7-2 to be up here. I don't know, but certainly 6-3 to be up here, at least being talked about again in in contention throughout the season, right? Maybe you don't end up that way, but you're in the conversation
Yes.
somewhere if you're winning enough games that you end up 6-3, right? That's I think what we're trying to get to. So okay, let's talk about what stats are needed to get there. So we did this metric last year, and again, we did it based on I believe at the time it was the top four, maybe, or even the top three at the time. I don't remember what the criteria was then in terms of the number of teams, but we looked at points per game. So for this year, in terms of offense and defense, I should say, for this year, we widened this net a little bit because we're looking at the top six. But what we found was something similar. They all fell into a bucket that was not that different, slightly different from what we identified last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. We were top 40 offense, top 30 defense last year. Was that the buckets?
That was the bucket. You got
Yeah.
it.
So this year, looking at these top six now, rather than again top three or four, whatever it was last year we were looking at, all six of these teams were at least top 50 in offense and top 40 in defense, with one exception being Oklahoma. One exception. They were 78th in offense. Yikes. But they were seventh in defense.
Thanks. Thanks, Brent Venables. Yep.
Yeah, which that sounds like a Brent Venables team, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so they were able to make up for a drastic shortfall in offense with having an elite level defense. So when you look at that, okay, makes sense, right? Maybe you don't score well, and again, points per game is all we're looking at here. But maybe you don't score well, but if you don't let the other team score kind of at all, seventh, right? Then we're looking, at being okay. And by the way, these are all team rankings. This is not just SEC, obviously. So we're talking 50 and 40 teams, but this is out of every team. This is where they ranked, not just within the SEC. So just to clarify that point, in case there was any confusion, which there shouldn't have been with those numbers, but just in case. So, so again, as we discussed last year when we looked at SEC dominance, this year for SEC relevance, if you will, or contention, whatever, right? Both offense and defense, I'm going to say, need to be inside the top 50. I won't necessarily say it has to be 50 offense, 40 defense. I think if you're inside the top 50 in both, right, or one is elite, call it inside the top 15 if the other is outside of that mark. Now, you can't miss that mark maybe as bad as Oklahoma did. 78th is abysmal, though the Gators were only like 74th in offense, just so you know, and 91st in defense for perspective, just so we're on the same page here, folks. But if you're inside the top 15 in one, whichever one, right? I don't think it really matters. And the other one is not too far outside the top 50, I think you're still going to see that work out. But it can't be 91st. That ain't going to work out.
No.
That's too far off the mark. And in fairness, you usually don't see that big of a swing. Honestly, looking at this with the 78th and 7th, that's a huge swing. You usually don't see that much distance between those two, especially in a Power 4 school, right? Maybe you see it in a group of six school, but not typically in the Power 4. So so those are my thoughts on the rankings. What are yours in terms of the points per game metric?
Yeah, here's the other thing too, B, that's tough when you do things like these, right? Because you're taking into consideration, here's what we found in the past, here's kind of what we see it to be, whatever. But at the end of the day, a balanced team that plays, wait for it, complementary football.
Oh boy. Oh
Yep,
boy. Watch out. Watch out.
yep. You know for a fact when a team can take the ball away, give their offense more opportunities, the defense stays on the field limited amount of time, translates to good things all around. Now, again, not in the case last year for FSU because they did rack up some yardage and they did possess the ball a hell of a lot of time, just couldn't put it in the end zone. That's different. But at the end of the day, I kind of agree with your take on, hey, top 50 here, top 40, that's going to be good. But if you can get to the elite level, and it's funny, I thought you were going to say elite in the sense of within top 20, but top 15, yeah, bingo. That's going to be great. Top 15 there, and the other one hovers like you said, not 78th, whatever the number.
Yeah,
Um,
I think maybe like, low 60s or something. If you miss that inside the 50 mark, then I think you probably can get away with it. But yeah,
and,
you can't.
and
78th is out there.
it's out there. So that's what I'm saying. Based off what we've done in the past, but under Napier's regime, I would be happy if we can get something elite in top 15. I think the other number has to be somewhere in the teens or of a 50s, right? So 55, 56, 58, whatever the number there. But either way, I'm curious to see where this team evens out because it's hard to take that data from Sumrall teams at Tulane and Troy just because of the difference in the conference, the difference in the talent there.
So let me ask you a question. Would you prefer to be 12th in defense or offense? I don't care. You can pick. It doesn't matter. And 62nd in the other metric, whichever one is not 12th. Or would you rather be 32nd in one and I don't know, 39th in the other?
Wow. Holy smokes, talk about put on the spot. Um, as much as I want to say I want to have something elite just to say that guess what?
hmm
Summerall did something on an elite basis. I'm gonna go back to a balanced complementary
I'm a
football type
thousand
approach.
percent with I'm a thousand percent with you. I would like to see us be able to be efficient on both sides,
Both
even if we
sides.
weren't elite on either. I think I would rather see that, especially because I think it builds you more towards the direction, because those numbers aren't bad, right? If you're inside the
No.
top 40 in both metrics, you're a good team. Because you're efficiently getting things done on both sides of the ball, right? You're preventing
Yes.
your opponent consistently from what they want to do, and you're getting done what you want to do consistently as well. But you're not elite at either one, but you're doing the a very high level efficient job at both if you're inside those numbers. So I'm with you. I want the scenario B there, and not because I think scenario A is bad or worse or anything else. It's just I don't want to have. I'm tired of seeing any of our rankings be that high. I'm sick of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s
Mm-hmm.
and the 122s. Like it's ridiculous. I'm
Yes.
over it. I'm tired of seeing Florida there. I think that had to do with bad coaching, bad execution, clearly bad play calling and design. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. I hope less as time goes on. But like I'm so tired of it, and I want to see us be better consistently. And I think when you talk about 32 and 39 or 32 and 38, whatever I said,
Yeah.
that shows better consistently across the board, and that's what I'm looking for right now. So I'm with you. That's my answer
Yeah.
also. So
Okay.
um, so yeah, so I think it's an interesting metric to look at. I think it's definitely something we will revisit as the season goes along and kind of talk about where we are and what that looks like in terms of performance, right? We just talked about it. I think we talked about it some during the season last year, but obviously we abandoned hope quickly on that one as things went downhill. But
We did.
yeah, but we did reference it, I think, in our bye-week pod. But ultimately it is something we want to watch and we want to kind of see how things are tracking. Now you got to wait a few weeks for this to kind of pan out, so you can't kind of look at it week 1 or week 2 or even really week 3. You got to get kind of 4 weeks into the season before you can kind of see where this thing flushes out. But then from there you can kind of start looking at it and seeing where these ranks kind of pan out to be and what they look like. So we'll definitely keep an eye on as the season goes along. So the last point in this, in terms of metrics, is we want to look at talent. So talk us through the talent ranks that we had last year from the team composite. This is the 247 team composite because they're the only one who does it. Talk us through the team rankings of these 6 teams. Where did they rank out? The 6 that we identified as being, the top third, quote unquote. I know it's a little more than that, but close
Yeah.
enough. And let's tie this back then to talking about our previous discussion on coaching versus talent and so on and so on.
Yeah. So let's start things off with good old UGA. So over there in Georgia, now we know Kirby Smart's still at the helm, obviously Gunnar Stockton, so on and so forth. Overall talent ranks first. Are you surprised?
No.
Okay. Especially with the run that Georgia's been on from the recruiting ranks, right? So that is what it is. Um, number two, number two, good old Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Ty
Yeah. So to
Simpson,
be clear, when you mentioned the SEC having less talent, teams 1 and 2 on the team talent composite are SEC schools.
SEC.
Just throwing
That
that
was
out.
my case. There
Moving
you
along.
go. So obviously Ty Simpson got drafted to the Rams. Great. Good luck with that. But we'll see what Kalen does
Yeah,
for this
that was a
upcoming.
mind blowing pick, but
Uh,
we'll leave that alone.
yeah,
My
we
brain almost
definitely
exploded.
will. So, anyways, Ole Miss, right? Get this, Ole Miss, right? Number 3 in the conference when it comes to talent composite, 21st. Oh,
Yep.
21st, folks. Okay. Next up, Timu. Yes, Texas A&M University. Uh, the Fighting Elkos, whatever you want to call them, then. 8th overall talent composite. Okay.
Yep.
Next up, Texas and Sark ranked 4th.
Yep.
I think a lot of people anticipate that. And of course, rounding out your top 6 teams in the SEC, Oklahoma, 14th overall in talent ranks. And there you go.
Yep. So the only one outside the top 20, Ole Miss.
Yes.
The only one outside the top 10 besides that, Oklahoma. So
Yes.
no real surprise when you look at that and see that the talent that they had. However, as we've talked about in previous pods, or on a previous pod, I should say,
Yes.
you're still able to do things even if you don't have the highest sphere of talent. Florida, by the way, last year's ranking 13th, 12th. I'll have to check that.
You know what? Yeah, I wasn't sure.
But at any rate, again, referencing our previous conversation, this is where coaching really comes into play because even though these ranks are what they are, the gap is less. Florida was 12th. The gap
Yes.
is less than it used to be between, say, 14th and 1st. Again, we broke all this down. There's a previous pod on that. Feel free to go back and listen to it. We broke down the average difference between 1 and 20 or 1 and 25. I don't remember what the difference in ranking was, but we went back and we looked at it, and the gap used to be a lot bigger in terms
Used
of
to be.
the talent ranking. It's a lot smaller now. So that difference is less. And so that's part of this, but also you have that coaching now is going to matter more because that gap isn't as significant. It isn't as big, right? All of those things. We talked about this at length, so I'm not going to go back into that whole conversation. But the interesting thing is that this represents a myriad of, okay, you've got the most talented team in the country, you got the second most, the fourth most, the eighth most, the 14th most, and the 21st most, and that 21st highest ranked team finished with the same record as the best. So in the
Mm-hmm.
SEC anyway. So when you look at that, and went the furthest in the playoff, by the way. So, when you look at that, that's what shows you that, okay, Florida has enough talent, is what I'm trying to say, right? And as we relate
Yes.
this back to UF, Florida has enough talent because we're not going to be 21st. We will be something inside the top 15. I can tell you without knowing, but I know. I don't know exactly where we're going to rank, but we will be 15th or better. I would put money on it, based on where we're at with player acquisitions and talent that we have and recruiting and so on and so forth, right? We may not still be 12th, we may fall a rank or two, but we will still be in that top 15. So don't tell me that we don't have the talent capability. So now it comes down to, do you have the coaching?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And so this is going to be the test to see, okay, does the coaching now improve? Does the play calling now improve? Does the scheme now improve to where we can take advantage of the talent that we do have and do something with it? So those are my thoughts on that piece of it and whether or not it's possible. For the record, I absolutely think it's possible to be in this tier. I think certainly 6-3, maybe even 7-2. We'll get to that in a second here. But let's look at that now, unless you have any other thoughts on this piece of it. Let's get into the schedule.
Let's get into it, B.
All right, rock and roll. 9-game SEC gauntlet, as you so aptly named it. I love that. Let's look at the shift to the 9-game schedule and break down for me. You've got some key matchups here that I see you want to call out. Break down your key matchups for the season next year.
Definitely. So the Gators will be going to Jordan Hare. They're going to Auburn to face the War Eagle, the Tigers, whatever they're called. It's another team in orange and blue, just happens to be burnt orange and navy blue. First trip to Auburn since 2011. You might remember there was a quarterback then, back then in the days, and anyways, used to go to Florida and anyway, so on and so forth. But anyways,
And by the way, they're the Fighting Alex Golishes, just so we're clear on who they are.
yeah. So here's the other thing, folks. This matchup is intriguing because first trip to Auburn since 2011. Okay, we've got a little bit of a drought there. Second thing is, for those of you who remember, Alex Golish was part of the interview process here at Florida, and his
And based on
quarterback.
everything I'm hearing, I'm super glad we didn't hire him, but we'll move
Yep.
on.
And his
Ooh, it
quarterback.
is rough out there on the plains right now.
It is his quarterback, Byron Brown, who tore us up last year, kind of didn't have a great spring game showing. So that will be interesting to see how the Fighting Golishes come around here to the fall. Okay. Next up, Oklahoma in the swamp. So the Oklahoma, the desert, dry, hot, cakey, clay-like. They're coming to the swamp. It's going to be hot, humid, sticky, yum. First ever home conference game against the Sooners. That is going to be a riot. Looking forward to that, definitely. Um, we'll see how Brent Venables does in an environment like that. John Mateer comes back. John Mateer, of course, he missed a couple games last year with the broken hand, the broken bone in the hand, whatever the case might be. I don't know if he's going to be as effective this year, clearly, based off their offensive rankings from last year. But either way, nonetheless, it's going to be neat to see Oklahoma in the swamp. And then the next one, Atlanta, neutral site, my rear end.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
We're the home team, clearly. I mean, we're listed as the home team, so we must be
Yeah,
the home team,
of
right?
course. It's only in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, just outside of Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. Yeah, of course. First ever matchup there, of course, because of the schedule and renovations that will be coming, right? So it's going to be first at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, then in Raymond James Stadium the following season. But regardless, big road test. I'm still calling it a road test because it will be.
That's a road test for sure, even though we're
Yeah,
somehow the home team, which
in
makes
that stadium.
absolutely zero sense.
Zero sense.
That's nonsensical. We're going to wear home uniforms playing in Atlanta against Georgia. I got nothing for it. But yeah, we'll move along. Yeah, no, I think those are great calls. I think those are three of the bigger games. Also be interesting to see us return trip to Austin. That's going to be one that I'll call out, from the debacle that was
Oh,
2023 in that game with no Lagway, right? Which then having Lagway was a big deal. Oh, little shade. Sorry, had to do it.
oh,
But
oh.
but no Lagway in that game. Now, in fairness, when we did play him at home the next year, he got all the smoke and took him out. So I'll give him that game. That was his
Yes.
best game of 2025. So but be interesting to see us go back into Austin and what we can do there, especially with if Texas is as good as they look like they could be. That could be a heck of a game. So be an interesting fight in that one. So we'll break down those schedules in a second. So the quick question is, and this should be a really easy answer in my opinion, can the Gators improve on their 2-6 conference mark from last year? God, I hope so.
Lord, yes. My
Um,
goodness.
certainly, I hope so. I mean, if we're not at least, I mean, heck, we can even be 3-6 and be better. Technically.
Yeah.
Let's hope it's not that. But yeah, no, I think based on what we already talked about, what we're looking for, I think the mark for me would be either 7-2 or 6-3, and we'll kind of get into that here when we look at the schedule. So, two different things I want to play with the schedule here. One, we got it lined up week to week this year versus last year, and then so we'll do this first. We'll go through, we'll look at each game, we'll say, is it harder than last year, easier than last year, or neutral to last year, right? Basically the same. And then from there, we'll go back through just the SEC games and we say, what do we think? Is it a win? Is it a loss? We're going to obviously do a full schedule breakdown later in the year. That's not what we're doing right now. This is just a gut feeling right now. We don't know near enough about the teams to really tell you anything for certain here. We'll do our, of course, full schedule breakdown analysis. That's a huge pod that we do later in the year. Takes a ton of research, honestly, but we'll get to that one later. This is not that. So this is just kind of a gut feeling. Say your instinct, and we'll see what comes out of it. So with that, let's start week 1. Last year it was LIU in the swamp. This year it's Florida Atlantic in the swamp. Easier, harder, same.
Slightly harder.
Yeah, I'm going to say same, right? Because it's still basically I mean, technically that's not an FCS opponent. That's a, you know, it is an FBS opponent, but
FBS, right? And that's the only reason I'm giving him the edge. You
yeah,
know what? Probably same makes sense, but FCS to FBS, that's the only reason why I give it the edge. But for the most part, instead
you're
of winning
right.
55-0, it's probably going to be 48-7. But either way,
Yeah, right. No, for sure. I don't think it is exactly the same, but I don't think it's enough harder that we can call it harder, right?
fair.
It's a
I'll take
home
that.
opener against a cupcake, right? At the end of the day.
I
Okay,
like cupcakes. Yes.
yeah, indeed. Week 2, South Florida last year. Now, regardless of the outcome, the opponent was South Florida, regardless of win or loss. This year, it's Campbell, which is an FCS school at home.
That would be the Fighting Camels. That should be easier.
I agree, easier, regardless of the fact that we lost. You're talking about a decent right school last year in UCF. Clearly, now still should have beat them, but nonetheless, they were a decent school, decent team, and right, wrong, or indifferent, we lost. There you go. Okay, last year, this one's interesting. Last year, week 3 at LSU. This year, week 3 at Auburn.
Believe it or not, I'm going to give the edge to LSU being the more difficult in Death Valley. I don't
Yeah,
know what Jordan Hare holds at night, but clearly based off the status of the Auburn program, I would say it's easier.
yeah, I think it has to be easier still. And first of all, we don't even know that it'll be at night. I don't know that that matters. Maybe it's better to play them at night versus Death Valley. Obviously, last year was Death Valley at night. Now, still say we should have won that game, but nonetheless, we did not. 5 picks, never going to win that game. So it is
Well,
what
if
it
we
is.
threw three picks, we might have had a chance.
Yeah,
But
3 picks might have won it, but it
that,
is
yeah,
what it is. Yeah, moving along. All right. Last year, this one's interesting. At Miami versus Ole Miss.
yeah, this is a head scratcher for me because Ole Miss comes to the swamp. So I like it for that reason. Pete Golding is at the helm. No more Shady Lane. But Trinidad Chambliss, very dangerous. He's back.
I take
Um,
it play, man.
the kid can play. That's my X factor in this game. Outside of that, I don't care about a whole lot of other personnel. So based off of that, but also Miami's front line is what really stuck out last year. So
Agreed. Very good.
that was
Very
a
good.
tough game. Tough game.
Yep.
We didn't make it easier on ourselves.
We did not.
I
We also could
don't
have won that game.
right, right. So I don't know what Ole Miss brings. I'm inclined to say same or
Me too.
easier,
I got
but
same.
I'm
I got
gonna say
same.
with same.
Yeah, I
Oh,
got
okay,
same for
okay.
this one for me. And again, you're welcome to differ, of course, but I think it's the same in terms of difficulty here, even though it's home versus away.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see enough difference in the opponent. I mean, maybe that's the home versus away age, but it was Miami away, and I don't know. Maybe initially that was an issue, but as the game
Uh-huh.
went on, half the stadium left because it's Miami. So it is what it is. All right.
Oh,
Last year, home Texas. This year at Missouri. That house of horrors that is going to Missouri for us.
yeah. So here's the thing, right? Versus Texas at I was gonna say the same, but Missouri, for whatever reason, I don't know if we don't like the Ozarks, we don't like Gators, don't like mountains. I don't know. Drinkwitz always has something up his sleeve. But at the end of the day, Texas still had the firepower last year with Arch. I'm gonna leave this one on the same spectrum.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just because of the home away factor, obviously
Yes.
these are both at home, they're both away. It's clearly Texas, but I think because you had Texas home and this one's away, I think it goes same for me. I'm with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, last year at Timu in a nightmare game that I absolutely hated and that we knew was going to be a bad matchup. And this year it's home versus South Carolina. I don't think we have to talk too long about this one.
Easier. I know Lenore Sellers had to start off the season strong, skip back, he regressed. He should progress again this fall, but either way, it's Shane Beamer, and yeah, easier.
Yeah, for sure. No argument there. Conversely, the next game, and we're not counting bye weeks for these, by the way, so we're not getting
Yeah.
into all the byes and stuff. But conversely, the next game was at home versus Mississippi State that we almost lost but shouldn't have. Thank you,
Oy.
Makai, who's now no longer here, but a great pick. And then and this year it will be at Texas.
Harder all the way around.
Harder, no question. That is
Period.
not a debate, right? No question. Okay. Now, this one's an interesting one because we just talked about it. It's the Georgia game, either way. Georgia last
Yeah.
year, Georgia this year. But the difference being you're in Jacksonville or you're this year in Atlanta.
Believe it or not, I don't like the element of that stadium. I don't like that stupid train horn. I don't like the graphics on the field. At least in Jacksonville, they do a decent job of splitting up the graphics and the
Yep.
sound and the noises. And I don't like it. I don't like it harder.
I think it's harder. I agree. You're a road team. That is a neutral site game. They keep the stadium neutral. They do a
Yep.
really good job.
Yep.
Even we hate the field, and God, I hope they fix the field in this reno.
Ugh.
But because it is an absolute wrecker. But other than that, it's a great atmosphere. It's a great game. The whole thing, it has its own elements, and it's a phenomenal thing. You're not going to have that in Atlanta. You're not going to have it in Tampa the year after either, for the record. But like, you're not going to have those elements there. You're just not. So to me, I think it has to go down as harder. Maybe it's not as harder as the one before, but it's still harder. So I'm with you there. All right, this is interesting. At Kentucky last year, and the drubbing that we took that we never should have. God, what an abysmal game. Oh, jeez. If we don't beat Kentucky this year, man, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
And you have in comparison for this season, home versus Oklahoma.
So, as much as we should not have taken, would you say drubbing? I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like the fact that we took it. I like the word choice. Um, Regardless of the fact, I would say Kentucky, same or easier. But guess what? Because of our performance there, I like the fact that Sumrall, former Kentucky linebacker, there's going to be a little bit of venom there with that because I think Sumrall's going to look at each game, do game film, do game breakdown, but also talk about, the history of each game, the rivalry to get that fire and passion going. But John Mateer's coming back for a second full season in Oklahoma. They've got some new offensive concepts, and it's Brent Venables on defense. I'm gonna put that game only because of how Kentucky played us last year as same.
Wow. Okay. I don't have it that way. I got Oklahoma's harder. We never should have
Harder.
lost. I agree with you that Kentucky always played us well, especially he always played Napier well. He had Napier's number, right?
Sure.
Stoops had Napier's number. So I just think that was a product of knowing all the plays we were going to call. And I don't think that's the case this year. And I don't think it's going to be the case moving forward with a lot of teams. I think it's harder this year. Oklahoma's a much, much more talented team, better opponent, all of the above, frankly, better coached overall, right? Stoops just knew how to get physical and handle the crap that we were calling. It just is what it is. Let's again call a spade, right? So I got this one as harder. I don't think, to me, I get where you're coming from, but I got this one as harder. All right, next week.
You.
Last year it was at Ole Miss, a game we actually gave a heck of a run for, considering where they were at in the season and what they were doing. And this year it's at Kentucky again, which confuses the heck out of me. How are we playing at Kentucky 2 years in a row? Makes zero sense. But moving along. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, new quarterback, new structure, half the O-line's new coach, easier.
100%. No doubt in my mind. You got a playoff team versus Kentucky. Yeah. No contest. Regardless of how they played us, it's not a competition. All right. The two Tennessee schools. Now, this used to be a very easy question. I don't know if it's quite as easy anymore. Last year, it was Tennessee at home, and the first loss to them since 2003, right? Yeah, that's fun. Enjoyed that a lot. Thanks, Billy, and leftovers from Billy in that case. But this year it is home against Vandy, who obviously is not the same Vandy. It ain't your granddaddy's Vandy. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so a couple things. Vandy was Vandy last year because of Diego Pavia. He was
Yep.
the X factor, and he did it very well. Well, I guess him and the publicity his mother got, but that was what it was. Diego lost his appeal. He's out. Well, he's clearly out of the draft as well. Not that he let his feelings be
He
hurt
did
about
get
that.
some today. The Ravens signed him as a UFDA.
Yay, great.
UDFA, sorry,
Good,
UDFA.
good, good luck with that at that height there in Baltimore. Anyways, having that been said, I don't know how Clark Lee repeats a season like that. Great coach, great program, great culture, but that was the anomaly for Vanderbilt. So based off of that and what Heupel has up his sleeve and what he does on the offensive side of the football, I'm gonna have that as easier.
Yep, I agree with you. And for the record, we didn't put them in here, but I believe they might have also been 6-2. Let me verify this before I speak out of turn.
Oh, I didn't
They
think about
were.
that.
They were 6-2. They were. We didn't even put them in
Nuts.
conversation here because of the changes, but they were also 6-2 in the SEC. So
Vandy at
um,
6-2.
it's
Unbelievable.
wild, wild. Yeah. We did not include them. Maybe we should have. Apologies if there are any Vandy fans out there listening. It was not meant to be personal, but we didn't put
Not at
them in
all.
just because of the transition to this season. And again, as mentioned, don't think that's going to be able to transition that way. Hey, listen, Clark Lee's done some great stuff. Maybe he'll
Yes.
surprise us, and if he does, good for him. No hate for Vandy like I have for Kentucky by any stretch of the imagination. So let's be
No.
very clear about that. But moving along. Last but not least, FSU at home last year, FSU on the road this year. Not like it really matters. I'm saying same, but you say what your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't the fact of the matter is Tommy Castellanos gave them an edge. Clearly, their offensive stats, they're ranked really good. Again, top 10 in the country. However, just could not score, put the football in the end zone. Based off of that, with Gus Malzahn going and 428 million in debt, I don't know what's going to happen in that game. FSU football's in shambles right now. I'm inclined to say easier, but yeah, we'll go with same.
Yeah, I mean, I can't call it easier. I hear you, but I can't call it easier with a road game. So to me, it's the same, and it's just the
Same,
same.
same. Yeah.
It's the same dumpster fire they've been for the last couple of seasons, which is great. Keep it up. Keep going bankrupt and not winning games. Tallahassee all the way. All right, moving right along. So based on that, you have this with 2 harders and 5 easiers. I have this with 3 harders and 5 easiers. Either way, this is an easier schedule.
Yes.
I think we can agree, right? Either
Yes.
way, on that toss up between the Oklahoma game that we had different on, everything else we agree
Sure.
on. And so no matter what, this is an easier schedule. You got at least 2 games at a minimum, possibly 3 that are easier than last year. Or I'm sorry, at least 5 games that are easier than
5.
last year, and then either 2 or 3 that are harder, depending on your perspective there. I mean, there's no way that's not going to be an easier schedule than last year was. So that's the good
Yes.
news. All right. Now that we've done that, let's play a little win-loss SEC. Let's go back to these SEC games. I'll write them down. Let's start with Auburn at Auburn. Win or loss, sir? Pick it.
I'm gonna pick
Just from
win.
just from the gut.
Win.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got to win as well. Home Old Miss.
Win.
Ooh, I got a loss in that one. That's Chambliss too much in that one. He's really good. But I like it. At Missouri.
Loss.
Yeah, I'm going to go win on that one. I think we can flip the script there. I think some of the toughness that he's going to
Oh,
bring is going to do something there. So I'm going to flip it to a win there. But I like it. Home South Carolina. I think we're going to align
win.
on this one. Yep, win. At Texas.
Loss.
Yeah, loss here too. Again, this is assuming Texas works out to be more of the team they were in the second half of the year, not the first half of the year, but I'm with you there.
Yes.
I think we both know how we're going to feel about the next one. Unfortunately, I really, really, really want to beat Georgia, but I don't think this year in Atlanta is the way to do it. Win or loss?
Loss.
Yeah, I'm with you. Home Oklahoma. Man, this is going to be a ball game.
It's gonna be a ball game, and I've got us triumphant. So win.
Agreed. I got to win. At Kentucky.
Win.
Yeah, 100%. John's going to go in there angry. And then home Vandy.
Win.
Yeah, same here.
Good.
6-3. One we split on where we got the loss in the middle there, but 6-3 is
Yep.
how we're calling this. Just
Yep.
off the cuff, off the get. Again, we are going to break this down. We're going to go into a lot more detail, but this was just gut reaction. We did not pick this in advance.
No.
This was a spur of the moment thing. So this is just us reacting as we saw the schedule and looked at the games. Again, we will go back through, and this is subject to change for the record, because when we go through and we look at, are the teams better or worse than they were last year? What do transfer classes look like? What does the recruiting look like? What is the potential for that? We break all that down in our schedule analysis. If you've listened to that pod before, it's a monster pod. It takes us about 2 hours to get through it all. But we really put a lot of effort into that one. That's coming in a couple of months here. We usually do it in July, late June, something like that. I don't know. But regardless, we will get into that later, and we'll really break this down and give you our full win-loss for the whole season. But having said that, looking at that, breaking that down, gut reaction, that's 6-3. So the question we raised earlier is, will we be contenders, or is it a fallacy? We'll rephrase it. What's the floor ceiling? Is the bowl game a goal? Can we get back to the upper third? Can we even be in contention for the CFP? So if you do go 6-3 there, I think we win the other three that are non-conference from the look of it. I would be shocked if we didn't win those three. That makes us 9-3. Are we in the CFP conversation if we're right there? You tell me. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what other schools do, but at the end of the day, is 9-3 good enough? Don't say that to Notre Dame. But
well, it will be for them, because they got that ranking bypass now, which is so ridiculous.
Well,
I cannot believe that. Ruling. That's absurd. But we'll move on.
Exactly. No, 9-3 is an interesting mark. It's a vast here. Okay, I'll just say it this way: vast improvement from what we have been accustomed to over these past 4 seasons. Feels really good to be close to double-digit wins, and that has to sniff the CFP contention, because the other thing that I don't think we're going to get points on is strength of schedule, especially with Florida Atlantic and Campbell. Period. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like there are other teams that didn't necessarily have the biggest strength of schedule, and they were still able to get in. I mean, technically, Bama had a stronger opening game in terms of it wasn't a cupcake, but it was FSU who then proceeded to be awful again, but they lost to them. So, you look at that and it's like, what? Like, so even though their strength of schedule was technically harder, right? Because of that game, I guess it doesn't matter because they lost it, and then that loss just kept getting worse. And it was as the season went on, it just kept looking worse and worse and worse of a loss. And they still made the playoff. So, was their schedule really that much harder than this one when you look at it? And they got in at 9-3. Now, I'm not saying obviously 9-3 doesn't always get you in. We've seen many examples where it doesn't. I think Texas should have gotten in last year. I don't think there's any question the way they were playing down the stretch. Honestly, the game that cost Texas getting in was losing to us. If they'd have lost to a different team, if they'd have lost to a better team and still been 9-3, I think they get in the playoff. It was the loss to a terrible Florida team, or at least a terrible executionally Florida team, because it was terrible talent, that cost them the playoff. That's what happened to them last year. And I get it. But so I guess it all comes down to you called for a loss against Ole Miss. I called or against Missouri. I called for it against Ole Miss. I think it helps us more if we lose to Ole Miss than it does Missouri, because the road away thing doesn't always matter that much. So I guess it would kind of depend on what those losses look like at the end of the year. And again, this is all hypothetical. We haven't broken all this down. I don't even know if this is really what I feel like about the schedule. I doubt it is. I probably end up lower than this when we really break it all down and I do my full analysis. I don't think I'm picking us to go 9-3. Maybe I'll have that much hope, but I don't think I will. This is not my official pick by any stretch of the imagination. It's just like we said, gut reaction and looking at this. So, but I think ultimately what we're seeing here is it was not that hard for me to pick this way. If I were to go through with this same team, the same way I felt about it, and pick against last year's schedule,
oh boy,
I ain't picking 9-3, buddy. I can tell you that right now. I ain't happening. It ain't happening. So that's the thing that I would say in comparison to last year's schedule. All those games that we had as harder, I'm definitely or easier this year are definitely become a lot harder to pick, and it's not near as easy to just say, oh yeah, that's a win. No, not at all. And certainly some of them become losses for sure,
Hmm.
for sure. So at any rate, that's the breakdown. Any other thoughts before we close this thing out?
Very interesting. I'm glad you went through that to just to get the knee jerks because it's really going to be interesting to see how all of this unfolds in the fall here, especially with not just us but several teams in the
Yeah.
SEC not announcing a starting QB. So there's that with all the battles, with everything else leading up to this football season. Um, It'll just be interesting indeed. I'm curious to when we get into our season breakdown. That should be it's gonna. There's a lot of meat left on the bone. I'll just say that. So yeah, looking
Yeah,
forward to that for sure.
there always is in that one for sure. But yeah, there will be a lot of things to look at, and one of the things that we'll look at is what we think of Florida's improvement or decline year over year as well, right? Because that's one of the elements of that pod is to look at what we think about our team. Did we improve? Did we
Hmm.
decline? Is it the same, right? Not just in talent, but also in coaching. Yeah, that's going to be a key element for us.
Heyo.
And that will be a factor in these evaluation processes as well. And we'll start looking at some of that with our next pod, which will be on the 12th, in 2 weeks from tonight, May 12th.
Yes.
And we will be reviewing Sumrall's player evaluation process. And what we mean by that is we're going to look back at what he's done historically at his previous tenures to evaluate different positions and players at different spots and kind of see, okay, what is he doing to make these choices and ultimately make these decisions? Because obviously we have some out there, and it's not just the QB battle. I would argue the O line is probably the most important when it comes to this and figuring out who goes where,
Yeah.
and kind of looking at this. So that's something that we're really going to have to take a look at and kind of see, okay, what is his decision making look like in the past? How's he going to apply that here going forward? Where have we made mistakes in this previously? We're going to look at that too, not obviously with Summerall, but just in our previous history. And what can we do to kind of see how we make that better here moving forward? Maybe even set some potential metrics for that as we move forward with that. So that'll be an interesting one to kind of look into here in a couple of weeks.
Definitely, especially when you look at the things that we've called out repeatedly in the Napier era regarding certain personnel being on the field when clearly they should not have been on the field. But again, they're oh, you want to talk about not being on the field? Folks, the UFL, if you watch it,
Oh, oh,
Trey
oh.
Dean continues to act like a fool also on a former Gator when he's clearly out of bounds for 1001, 1002, 1003 and deliver a hit. Trey Dean the third still doing Trey Dean like things. Are you surprised? I'm not. I'll
No,
just
because he
leave that
can't
there.
cover the guy, so he's got to hit him late.
Right? So, adding more insult to injury that ever could be, Trey Dean.
Yeah, that was
Oh, the disappointment. Yeah,
agreed.
exactly.
Agreed.
So,
But
anyways, but yeah, looking forward to break that down as far as Summerall goes because we believe that he has a much different process than Billy Napes, and we're going to talk about some specific examples I did in previous tenures to show that, and so we expect that it's going to be no different here at Florida this fall, especially when you again, I'm tying a lot of things back to his opening press conference because of you have one job, that is to win. He understands the job. He believes he can do it. And how can you do it as quickly as possible? And that's what he's in charge of doing. And I'm sure that's what he goes to bed every night thinking about. What else can we do so that to make me not look like a fool on that podium when I was announced as the coach of this school? So, anyways, that's that. Good job, B. Great breakdown there. I like the angles, some of the angles that you took as far as the top teams in the SEC. Hopefully we can return to SEC contention. And thank y'all out there for listening. We really appreciate the patronage. We appreciate the support. Like,
absolutely.
subscribe, click, share, whatever the popular term the kids are saying nowadays, go out and do it, spread it. We love doing it just because of our love of Florida football. And to that end, wherever you are, whenever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around, Gator Nation.